You know, they say you never truly know someone until they show you who they really are. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible when I came home from what was supposed to be a relaxing 2-week vacation in Sedona, Arizona. There I was, standing in my own lobby with my suitcase, watching a complete stranger tell me that my penthouse, the home I'd owned for over 18 years, now belonged to my daughter, who had sold it. And when I called her, desperate for answers, she laughed at me. Actually laughed. "Well, Mom," she said, "I guess you're technically homeless now. But here's what Audrey didn't know, what she couldn't have known. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching this from. What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're finding this story gripping, hit that like button and subscribe for more content. Trust me, you'll want to know how this ends." 3 weeks before everything fell apart, I was sitting on the patio of a beautiful Airbnb in Sedona, watching the red rocks glow in the sunset. The air smelled like juniper and sage, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. I'm 53 years old, and I've spent most of my life working myself to the bone. I started as a receptionist at a real estate firm in Boston back in the 90s, worked my way up to office manager, then became a licensed agent myself. When I finally saved enough, I bought that penthouse in downtown Chicago with cash. No mortgage, no debt. It was mine. I'd lived there for 18 years. That penthouse wasn't just a home. It was proof that I'd made it. Proof that a woman who started with nothing could build something solid and lasting. But lately, my daughter Audrey had been calling more frequently, always with some new crisis. Her husband Derek's business wasn't doing well. They were stressed about money. Could I help them out? Just a loan, Mom. I'd helped before, a few thousand here and there, but it never seemed to be enough. That's why I booked the trip to Sedona. I needed distance. I needed to figure out how to set boundaries without destroying our relationship. I had no idea that while I was writing about new beginnings in my journal, my daughter was erasing everything I'd built. I had no idea the power of attorney I'd signed 3 years earlier, just as a precaution before my gallbladder surgery, was being used against me at that very moment. The drive back to Chicago was pleasant. I listened to audiobooks, stopped at roadside diners, took my time. I wasn't in a hurry. Why would I be? I was going home. I pulled into my building's parking garage late afternoon. Everything seemed normal. I wheeled my suitcase toward the elevator, already thinking about taking a long bath and ordering Thai food. I had no idea I'd never make it through my front door. The elevator ride to the 14th floor was exactly like it always was. I stepped out into the familiar hallway, already fishing for my keys. Mrs. Chen from 14B was watering the plants. "Welcome back, dear," she said. "How was your trip?" "Wonderful," I replied, smiling. I reached my unit, 14F, the corner unit with the best view, and slid my key into the lock. It didn't turn. I jiggled it, thinking maybe the lock had gotten stiff, but nothing. The key wouldn't even go in all the way. That's when I noticed. The lock itself looked different, newer, shinier. My stomach did a little flip. I pressed the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. Through the frosted glass panel beside the door, I could see movement inside. The door opened, but only partially. A chain held it closed. A man I'd never seen before stared out at me. "Oh, hi," I said, trying to keep my voice pleasant. "I think there's been some kind of mix-up. I live here. This is my penthouse." The man's eyebrows drew together. "What? I'm Bonnie Matthews. I've lived here for 18 years. I held up my key ring. "See? I have keys." "Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about." He looked over his shoulder, and a woman appeared behind him. "Honey, there's someone at the door saying she lives here." "This is my home," I repeated, hearing my voice shake now. There must be some mistake. The man slowly shook his head. "We're not doing repairs. This is our place. We bought it 3 weeks ago, closed on it, moved in, everything." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible," I whispered. "You can't have bought it. It's mine." "Ma'am," the woman said, crossing her arms. "We have the deed. We hired a realtor, signed all the papers. This is our home now. Who sold it to you?" The words came out sharper than I intended. The man and woman exchanged glances. "Your daughter," the man finally said. Audrey Matthews Porter. She handled the sale. Said you were moving into assisted living and wanted to liquidate your assets. My legs went weak. I reached out and grabbed the door frame to steady myself. My daughter, I repeated numbly. Yes. She had all the paperwork, the power of attorney, everything. Our lawyer checked it all out. It was legal. The door closed. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the door that had been mine for 18 years. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Audrey. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Mom, you're back early. Audrey's voice was bright, almost cheerful. Audrey? My voice came out hoarse. Why are there strangers living in my penthouse? Silence. Not the silence of confusion, but the silence of someone who's been caught. Audrey, answer me. Why did you sell my home? Then came the sigh. That heavy, exaggerated sigh. Mom, okay, listen. I can explain. Then explain. You're being dramatic, Audrey said, her voice tinged with impatience. It's not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal? I felt heat rising in my chest. Audrey, this is my home. Actually, Mom, I did have the right. Remember that power of attorney you signed? Well, Derek and I talked to a lawyer, and technically, I could make financial decisions on your behalf if necessary. My mind was spinning. That was for medical emergencies, not permission to sell my property behind my back. Well, our lawyer said it was legal, so. Your lawyer? I repeated slowly. A friend of Derek's from college. He's a real estate attorney. He looked at everything and said we were fine. Audrey, why would you do this? My voice cracked. Another pause. Then quietly. We needed the money, Mom. You needed the money? Yes. Derek's business is in serious debt. We were about to lose everything. The bank was threatening to foreclose. We had creditors calling every day. What were we supposed to do? You were supposed to talk to me. The words came out louder than I intended. You were supposed to ask for help, not steal from me. We didn't steal, Mom. God, you always make everything so dramatic. We got fair market value. The money was deposited into an account. You'll get a portion once we sort out Derek's debts. A portion? My hands were shaking. Audrey, that was my home. That was my security. That was everything I worked my entire life to build. And now you'll have cash. You're getting older, Mom. You don't need a place that big anymore. Honestly, we were kind of doing you a favor. A favor. She thought she was doing me a favor. Where exactly did you think I was going to live? I don't know. You have options. Look, Mom, I really don't have time for this. Derek and I are dealing with a lot of stress. The last thing I need is you making this harder. Audrey, do you hear yourself? Do you understand what you've done? What I've done is save my family from financial ruin. You should want to help your children. Look, I gotta go. Derek needs me. We'll talk soon. Audrey, don't you dare. The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. My own daughter had sold my home and then hung up on me when I tried to talk about it. Mrs. Chen's door cracked open. Dear, are you all right? I turned to look at her. I'm fine, I managed to say, though we both knew it was a lie. I picked up my suitcase handle. I need to find a hotel. As I walked back toward the elevator, I felt something shift inside me. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, something sharper. Audrey thought this was over. Thought I'd cry a little, maybe get angry, and then accept what she'd done. But she'd made a mistake. She'd forgotten something important about me. I didn't build my life by accepting things I couldn't change. I built it by changing things I couldn't accept. And I was about to remind her of that. The hotel room was nothing like my penthouse. Beige walls, generic painting, a bed too soft and pillows too flat. But it had a roof and a lock, and that was all I needed. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, still in the same clothes from the drive. I couldn't bring myself to unpack. Unpacking meant accepting this was real. My phone buzzed. A text from Audrey. Mom, I know you're upset, but you need to understand we had no choice. You would have done the same thing. I deleted it without responding. But sitting here wasn't going to solve anything. I pulled out my laptop. One benefit of being meticulous my whole life, I kept digital copies of everything important. Property deeds, bank statements, legal documents, all organized in folders, all backed up to the cloud. I opened the power of attorney I'd signed 3 years ago. I read it now with fresh eyes. The language was clear. It was intended for situations where I couldn't make decisions for myself. Medical emergencies, cognitive decline. It was never meant to give Audrey carte blanche to sell my property while I was on vacation. I opened my email and searched for messages from Audrey. 5 weeks ago. Hi, Mom. We should grab lunch before you leave. Want to go over some paperwork? Paperwork. My stomach clenched. I vaguely remembered that lunch. Audrey had brought a folder, said something about updating my emergency contacts. I'd signed some things without reading them closely. She was my daughter. I trusted her. I kept scrolling. 3 weeks ago, while I was in Sedona, I'd received an email from a real estate agency. Subject: Congratulations on your sale. I opened it now with trembling fingers. There were attachments, sale documents. I downloaded them and started reading. The sale price was listed as $950,000, but the money wasn't going into my account. According to the wire transfer instructions, the funds were being sent to an account in Audrey and Derek's names. I kept reading. There was my signature on the purchase agreement, except it wasn't quite my signature. It was close. Someone had practiced, copied my style, but I could see the differences. The way the B in Bonnie curved, it was slightly wrong. The loop in the M was too sharp. Audrey had forged my signature. This wasn't just misuse of power of attorney. This was fraud, forgery. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd deliberately forged my signature to sell my home without my knowledge. I opened another folder, bank statements. What I found made me go cold. Over the past 6 months, there had been small withdrawals from my savings account. 1,000 here, 2,000 there. Audrey had access as my power of attorney. She'd been siphoning money from me for months. The total came to nearly $23,000. I pressed my hands against my face. This was worse than I'd imagined. This wasn't a desperate decision made in panic. This was calculated, planned, methodical. My daughter had been stealing from me for 6 months. I stood and walked to the window. The hotel overlooked a parking lot. People going about their normal lives while mine fell apart. But even as the pain threatened to consume me, something else was building underneath. Determination. Audrey thought she'd won, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I'd spent 40 years in real estate. I knew how the system worked. I knew how to spot fraud. I knew how to build a case. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a different contact. Robert Harrison, my lawyer, my friend, someone I'd known for 30 years. It was late, almost 9 p.m., but I called anyway. He answered on the second ring. Bonnie? Everything okay? Robert, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need your help. My daughter just stole everything from me, and I need to get it back. Robert met me at his office the next morning. When I walked into that familiar building on Michigan Avenue, I felt something I hadn't felt since I got back from Sedona. Hope. Sit, he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. Tell me everything. And I did. I started with the vacation, the return home, the stranger at my door. I told him about the phone call with Audrey, about the forged signatures I'd found, about the months of small withdrawals. I showed him the documents I'd printed. Robert listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back and rubbed his temples. Bonnie, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I don't need apologies, I said quietly. I need to know if I can fix this. He leaned forward. Let me be very clear. What Audrey did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. Multiple counts of fraud, forgery, elder abuse, misuse of power of attorney. This isn't a gray area. This is criminal. Can I get my home back? That's the goal, he said. But I need to be honest. The couple who bought your penthouse, they're innocent victims too. They purchased in good faith. Getting the sale reversed requires proving the entire transaction was fraudulent from the start. I have proof, I said, pointing to the documents. That's a good start, Robert said, pulling out a legal pad. We'll need more, though. Timeline of events, communications with Audrey, proof you never intended to sell, testimony from people who can attest to your competence. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, she saw me the day I got back. She can testify I had no idea what happened. Good. Who else? My doctor. I just had my checkup before the trip. He can confirm I'm in perfect health. Robert wrote everything down. We'll need bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals. We'll need the original power of attorney. And we need to act fast. How fast? I'll file an emergency motion for injunction this afternoon. That should freeze any further transfers and put the property status in question. He paused, looking at me over his glasses. Bonnie, I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Audrey is your daughter. Taking her to court will destroy whatever relationship you have left. She destroyed it when she forged my signature and sold my home, I said, my voice firm. I gave her life. I raised her. I sacrificed for her. And she paid me back by stealing everything I worked for. Whatever relationship we had, it ended when she decided I was worth less to her than money. Robert nodded slowly. All right then, let's talk strategy. We spent the next 2 hours going through every detail. He contacted a forensic document examiner who could analyze the forged signature. He reached out to a private investigator who could look into Derek's financial history and gambling debts. If we can prove Derek was in serious trouble and Audrey knew about it, that establishes motive, Robert explained. It shows this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional theft. By noon, I felt like I could breathe again. Not because the problem was solved, but because I finally had a path forward. I wasn't helpless. I was fighting back. One more thing, Robert said. Audrey will likely contact you soon. She'll realize you're not accepting this quietly. She might apologize. She might cry. She might try to make you feel guilty. Can you handle that? I thought about all the times Audrey had manipulated me over the years. The emotional blackmail. The guilt trips. I'd fallen for it every time because I loved her. Yes, I said. I can handle it. 3 days later, I was sitting in a conference room at Robert's office, surrounded by people I desperately needed. Daniel Wright, the forensic document examiner. Patricia Moore, a private investigator specializing in financial fraud. And Robert himself, with a growing stack of folders. Let's start with the signature analysis, Robert said. Daniel positioned his magnifying glass over the sale documents. Ms. Matthews, I've examined both the signature on the deed and examples of your genuine signature from various documents. There are significant differences. He pointed at enlarged images projected on a screen. See, your natural signature has a very distinctive flow. The B in Bonnie has a slight backward curve that connects to the O, but in the forged signature, that connection is missing. The person who signed this tried to copy your style, but didn't understand the muscle memory behind it. There are at least 7 distinct differences I can point to, Daniel continued. The pressure points are wrong. The speed of writing is inconsistent. And there's a slight tremor suggesting hesitation, nervousness about signing someone else's name. Can you testify to this in court? Robert asked. Absolutely. This signature is definitively not authentic. Robert made a note. Excellent. Patricia, what did you find about the financial situation? Patricia opened her laptop. Derek Porter is in bad shape. Over $300,000 in debt accumulated in the last 2 years, most of it from gambling. I felt my stomach drop. He has accounts at 2 different casinos in Indiana, plus online gambling sites. He's also taken out loans from private lenders, the kind that charge interest rates above 18% annually. And Audrey knew, I said. Oh, she knew. Patricia clicked to another screen. These are from their joint account. See these large cash withdrawals? Always just under $10,000 to avoid bank reporting requirements. Audrey made most of these herself. I stared at the dates. Some were from over a year ago. There's more, Patricia said. Derek's business has been operating at a loss for 3 years. He's been falsifying tax documents. The IRS hasn't caught on yet, but they will. Robert leaned back. So we have clear motive. Patricia, did you find evidence they planned this in advance? Yes. Email from 4 months ago. Audrey to Derek, subject Mom's Properties. In it, she's discussing the current market value of your penthouse and how much they could get for it. 4 months ago. Months before I'd even planned my trip. And text messages to a real estate agent from 6 weeks ago, Patricia continued. She was asking about power of attorney sales. 6 weeks ago, right before that lunch. The notary who witnessed the signature, Robert said. What about him? Kevin Foster, Mobile notary who advertises fast service. I spoke to him yesterday. He admitted off the record that he doesn't always verify identities thoroughly. I'm betting Audrey paid him extra. One more thing, Patricia said softly. Audrey's personal accounts, separate from the joint account. She's been moving money to an account in the Cayman Islands. Started about 2 weeks after your penthouse sale. She's hiding assets, Robert said immediately. She knew this could come back to bite her. The Cayman Islands. My daughter had opened offshore accounts. I stood and walked to the window. How much did they actually get from the sale? $950,000, Robert said quietly. Minus costs. Probably around $890 net. How much is left? Patricia hesitated. Maybe $240,000. The rest has been used to pay debts, though not all of them. Some went to the Cayman account. There are large cash withdrawals I can't trace. $650,000 spent or hidden in 3 weeks. What happens next? I asked. Tomorrow morning we go to court, Robert said. We file for an emergency injunction to freeze all assets and reverse the sale. We present all our evidence. We also start criminal proceedings. Will it work? With evidence like this? Yes. I'm confident we'll win. The day of the hearing arrived. I woke before dawn, dressed carefully in a navy suit. Pearl earrings Tom had given me. I wanted the judge to see me as I was, a competent, dignified woman who'd been wronged. Robert picked me up at 8. Ready? He asked. I nodded. We made our way to Judge Whitmore's courtroom. Audrey and Derek were already there with their lawyer, Todd Brenner. Audrey wouldn't look at me. Derek glared with barely disguised anger. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Whitmore. Judge Whitmore entered. Sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. This is a hearing on a motion for emergency injunction, she said. Mr. Harrison, present your arguments. Robert stood and began his case. Precise, methodical. He presented the forged signature analysis, the timeline, the evidence of planning, the unauthorized withdrawals, Derek's gambling debts, everything we'd accumulated. Judge Whitmore listened carefully, asking clarifying questions. When Robert finished, Brenner stood. Your Honor, the defense contends that Ms. Audrey Matthews Porter acted within her legal rights under the power of attorney. Mr. Brenner, the judge said, are you seriously arguing that forging someone's signature falls within the scope of power of attorney? We contest that the signature was forged, Your Honor. Ms. Bonnie Matthews is 73. 53, I said sharply. Judge Whitmore looked at me. Ms. Matthews, please let your attorney speak. My apologies, Your Honor, Robert said. But for the record, my client is 53, not 73, and she has no cognitive impairment. Brenner looked flustered. The point remains. It's possible her signature has simply changed over time. Your Honor, Robert stood. We have a certified forensic examiner prepared to testify the signature is definitively forged. Judge Whitmore studied the documents. Ms. Matthews, did you authorize the sale of your penthouse? I stood. No, Your Honor. I had no knowledge until I returned from vacation and found strangers living there. And the power of attorney. What was your understanding of its purpose? It was for medical decisions, Your Honor. I signed it before gallbladder surgery 3 years ago. It was meant for hospital bills, medical choices if I was unconscious. That's all. Did you ever discuss selling your property with your daughter? Never, Your Honor. Judge Whitmore turned to Brenner. Do you have any evidence, Ms. Matthews intended to grant her daughter authority to sell her property? He shuffled papers. Not specific evidence, Your Honor, but the document grants broad financial authority. For medical purposes, Robert interrupted. The document specifically states it's meant for medical decision-making and associated financial matters. Hospital bills, not real estate. Judge Whitmore was silent, studying the document. Finally, she looked up. I'm granting the emergency injunction. All accounts related to the penthouse sale are frozen effective immediately. The property transfer is suspended pending full trial. Mr. Brenner, your clients are not to dispose of any assets or make large transactions without court approval. Is that clear? Your Honor, this will cause significant hardship. They should have thought of that before allegedly forging signatures and selling property that wasn't theirs, the judge said dryly. The injunction stands. We'll schedule a full hearing 6 weeks from today. 6 weeks. More weeks in limbo. But it also meant Audrey and Derek couldn't touch what was left, couldn't hide more assets, couldn't run. This hearing is adjourned. As we filed out, Audrey finally looked at me. Her eyes were red, face drawn. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Derek pulled her away. Outside, Robert shook my hand. That went exactly as we hoped. 6 weeks from now, we'll have a full trial. Use this time to rest and recover your strength. The days following were strange. I was in limbo between the life I'd had and the life I was trying to get back. I spent most days working with Robert, preparing for trial. But at night, alone in that hotel room, doubt crept in. On those nights, I'd look at photos of my penthouse, the view from the balcony, the reading nook, my home, my sanctuary, and then I'd remember Audrey's voice. Stop being so dramatic. The casual dismissal. The complete absence of remorse. No, I wasn't wrong. I was fighting for what was mine, for justice. 6 weeks crawled by. Robert kept me updated. More evidence found, more hidden money tracked. The DA's office announced they'd be pressing criminal charges. Each piece of news strengthened our case. Finally, the day of the trial arrived. I woke before dawn, dressed carefully. The same navy suit, pearl earrings. Robert picked me up at 8. The trial was scheduled for 9:30. How are you feeling? He asked. Nervous, I admitted. And if something goes wrong? Nothing's going to go wrong. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have the truth. We arrived at the courthouse. It was more crowded this time. A jury had been selected. 12 people who would decide my fate. They sat in the jury box, serious faces, attentive. Audrey and Derek were already there. Audrey looked thinner, dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes hung loose. Derek looked angry, jaw clenched, eyes hard. All rise. Judge Whitmore entered and took her place. This is the case of Matthews versus Matthews, Porter and Porter. Opening statements. Mr. Harrison, you may proceed. Robert stood and addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about trust. About a daughter who exploited her mother's trust to commit fraud. Bonnie Matthews worked her entire life to buy her home. While she was on vacation, her daughter forged her signature and sold that home without her knowledge. This isn't a family dispute. This is theft, and we'll prove it beyond any doubt. Brenner stood. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear is a tragedy, but not the tragedy Mr. Harrison describes. This is the tragedy of a family torn apart by misunderstanding. Audrey Matthews Porter acted in what she believed was her mother's best interest, using authority her mother had legally granted. This is about different interpretations of legal documents, not fraud. I felt my teeth clench. Different interpretations. The plaintiff may call her first witness, Judge Whitmore said. The plaintiff calls Bonnie Matthews. I walked to the witness stand on shaky legs. The bailiff had me place my hand on the Bible and swear to tell the truth. Robert started with easy questions. My name, my age, how long I'd owned the penthouse. Then he moved to the vacation. Ms. Matthews, when you left for Sedona, did you have any intention of selling your home? None whatsoever. I loved that home. And did you give your daughter permission to sell it? Absolutely not. I had no idea she was even considering it. What happened when you returned? I told the story. Strangers at my door. The phone call with Audrey. Her dismissive tone. Robert showed me the power of attorney. Is this your signature? Yes. I signed that before my surgery 3 years ago. What was your understanding of this document's purpose? It was for medical emergencies. Hospital bills. Medical decisions if I couldn't make them myself. Did you ever discuss using it to sell property? Never. Robert showed me the sale documents. Is this your signature? I studied it. No, that's not my signature. It's similar, but it's not mine. How can you tell? I've been signing my name the same way for over 50 years. The flow is wrong. The connections between letters are off. Someone tried to copy it but didn't have the muscle memory. Thank you. No further questions. Brenner stood for cross-examination. Ms. Matthews, you're 53, correct? Yes. And would you say your memory is as sharp as when you were younger? My memory is excellent. I can tell you what I ate for breakfast 6 weeks ago if you'd like. A few jurors smiled. Brenner's jaw tightened. Isn't it possible you had a conversation with your daughter about selling and simply forgot? No. I would remember discussing selling my home. Your daughter testified in deposition that you complained about upkeep costs, that you mentioned moving to something smaller. I never said anything of the kind. So your daughter is lying? Yes, I said, looking directly at him. She's lying just like she lied when she forged my signature. Just like she lied to the realtor. Just like she lied to the couple who bought my home. You seem very angry at your daughter. Wouldn't you be angry if someone stole from you? Objection, Brenner said. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Whitmore said. Brenner tried a few more angles, but I didn't waver. Finally, he dismissed me. Robert called Daniel Wright, the forensic examiner. Daniel was brilliant, explaining in clear terms how signatures work, how muscle memory creates patterns, and how the signature on the sale documents was definitively not mine. Brenner tried to challenge him, but Daniel had decades of experience. The jury looked convinced. Next was Patricia Moore. She explained everything she'd found. Derek's gambling debts, the casino accounts, the private loans, the falsified business records, the offshore account. With each piece of evidence, the jury's expressions changed from neutral to shocked to disgusted. Brenner tried to object, but Judge Whitmore shut him down. The defendant's financial situation is directly relevant to establishing motive. Objection overruled. Finally, Robert called my doctor, who testified I was in excellent health, no cognitive decline, no memory issues, as sharp as anyone half my age. When Robert rested our case, I felt cautiously hopeful. Then Brenner called Audrey to the stand. She walked slowly, looking small and frightened. She took the oath and sat, hands folded in her lap. Ms. Matthews Porter, why did you sell your mother's penthouse? Audrey's voice was quiet, trembling. We were desperate. Derek's business had failed. We had creditors calling every day. I was terrified we'd lose our house, that our children would end up on the street. I thought I was doing the right thing. Did you intend to defraud your mother? No, never. I thought the power of attorney gave me authority. I thought I was helping. Did you forge your mother's signature? No. I signed it myself, but I believed I had the legal right to sign on her behalf. Robert stood for cross-examination. Ms. Matthews Porter, you testified you believed you had authority to sell. Yes. Did you consult the lawyer who drafted the power of attorney? Mr. Harrison here, who would know what it was meant for. Silence. No. Why not? I didn't think I needed to. But you consulted Derek's friend, who told you what you wanted to hear. We talked to a lawyer, yes. Robert showed her the emails from 4 months before. These are emails where you discuss the market value of your mother's penthouse. You sent these 4 months before the sale. Does that sound like a desperate, last-minute decision? Audrey's face flushed. I was just exploring options. And these text messages to a real estate agent 6 weeks before your mother left, asking about power of attorney sales. Was that also exploring options? Yes. And this purchase, Robert displayed the credit card statement, tracing paper, high-quality pens, and a book about document authentication. What were those for? Objection, Brenner stood. Speculation. Your Honor, these are purchases made by the defendant directly related to the forgery, Robert said. I'll allow it. Answer the question. Audrey was silent. I don't remember. Let me ask directly. Did you forge your mother's signature on those documents? Another long pause. Yes, but I had authority. You had authority to forge her signature? Robert let the question hang. After the sale, you opened an account in the Cayman Islands and transferred $67,000. Why? That was for our children's future. Or was it because you knew what you'd done was illegal and wanted to hide assets? Objection. Badgering. Withdrawn. No further questions. Audrey practically fled the witness stand. Derek was next. He tried to look strong, but his testimony fell apart under Robert's questioning. Yes, he had gambling debts. Yes, he'd hidden the extent of his problems. Yes, he'd been the one to suggest using the power of attorney. So this was your idea, Robert said. You convinced your wife to steal from her own mother to pay your gambling debts. We didn't steal anything, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Derek testified next, and his performance on the stand was a disaster. Brenner tried to paint him as a victim of circumstances, a businessman who'd hit hard times through no fault of his own. But under Robert's cross-examination, the truth came pouring out. "Mr. Porter, you have gambling debts exceeding $300,000, correct?" Robert asked, his tone neutral but firm. Derek shifted in his seat. That's an exaggeration. Is it?" Robert pulled out bank statements, casino records, loan documents. "These records show visits to casinos in Indiana totaling over 200 visits in the past 18 months. Would you call that recreational gambling?" "I had a problem," Derek admitted, his voice tight. "I was dealing with a lot of stress from the business." "And you hid this problem from your family?" I didn't want to worry them. But eventually Audrey found out, didn't she? And when she did, you convinced her that the only solution was to sell her mother's home to pay your debts." "We discussed options together," Derek said defensively. "Options?" Robert's eyebrows raised. "Mr. Porter, whose idea was it to use the power of attorney to sell Ms. Matthews's penthouse?" Derek looked at Audrey, then at his lawyer, then back at Robert. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. "It was a mutual decision." "That's not what I asked. Whose idea was it originally?" I might have suggested it first." "You might have, or you did." Derek's jaw clenched. "I suggested we look into whether it was legally possible. And when Audrey expressed concerns about doing this without her mother's knowledge, what did you tell her?" "Objection," Brenner stood. "Speculation. The witness can't testify about private conversations." "Your Honor, Mr. Porter's own deposition states he had these conversations with his wife. I'm simply asking him to confirm what he already testified to under oath." Judge Whitmore considered. "I'll allow it. Mr. Porter, answer the question." Derek looked cornered. "I told her we didn't have a choice, that we'd lose everything if we didn't act. You told her that her mother would be fine, didn't you? That she had other resources, other properties, plenty of money?" "I believed that was true." "Did you know Ms. Matthews was on vacation when you proceeded with the sale?" "Yes." "Did you think that was relevant information to share with the buyers? With the real estate agent? With anyone involved in the transaction?" We were advised it wasn't necessary." "By the lawyer who was your college friend? The one who told you exactly what you wanted to hear?" Derek's face reddened. "He said it was legal." "Legal and ethical are not the same thing, Mr. Porter." Robert let that hang in the air. "Did you know your wife was forging her mother's signature on those documents?" "I don't know what she signed." "You were there, weren't you? At your home, when she practiced signing her mother's name? When she ordered tracing paper and high-quality pens online?" "I don't recall." "You don't recall, or you don't want to admit you were complicit in fraud?" "Objection." Brenner's voice was sharp. "Counsel is badgering the witness." "Sustained." "Mr. Harrison, rephrase." Robert nodded. "Mr. Porter, after the sale, how much of the $890,000 went directly to paying your gambling debts?" Derek hesitated. "I'm not sure of the exact amount. Let me help you. According to financial records, approximately $420,000 was used to pay off casino debts, private loans, and gambling-related credit cards. Does that sound accurate?" "It's possible." "So, nearly half of Ms. Matthews' life savings went directly to funding your addiction?" Derek said nothing. No further questions. When Derek left the stand, he looked like a man defeated. The jury's expressions ranged from disgust to pity, but none of them looked sympathetic to the defendant's cause. Brenner called a few character witnesses, friends of Audrey's who testified about what a good mother she was, how devoted to her children. But Robert's cross-examination revealed that none of them had known about the sale of the penthouse until after it happened. None of them had been consulted. None of them had any idea the extent of Derek and Audrey's financial problems. The final witness was a real estate expert Brenner called to testify about power of attorney sales. But even this backfired. Under Robert's questioning, the expert admitted that standard practice would involve direct communication with the property owner, verification of intent, and clear documentation that the sale was in the owner's best interest. "In your professional opinion," Robert asked, "would selling someone's primary residence while they're on vacation without their knowledge meet the standard of acting in their best interest?" The expert shifted uncomfortably. "It would be highly unusual and potentially problematic." "Thank you. No further questions." When both sides finally rested their cases, Judge Whitmore gave careful instructions to the jury. She explained the law regarding power of attorney, the requirements for proving fraud, the standards for elder abuse. She reminded them that their job was to determine whether the defendants had acted unlawfully, not whether they had acted out of desperation. Desperation, she said, looking directly at the jury, does not justify fraud. Financial hardship does not justify theft. Family relationships do not exempt anyone from the law. Your duty is to determine whether the evidence proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that these defendants deliberately and knowingly committed the crimes they're accused of. The jury filed out to deliberate. And then came the waiting. Robert and I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom. He reviewed notes, making occasional comments about how well the trial had gone, how strong our evidence was, how convincing the witnesses had been. But I could barely hear him over the pounding of my own heart. Everything I'd fought for, my home, my dignity, my sense of justice, came down to what 12 strangers were deciding in that room. An hour passed. Then, too, Robert kept assuring me this was normal, that thorough deliberation was actually a good sign. It means they're taking it seriously, he said. They're going through the evidence carefully, but each minute felt like an hour. Each hour felt like a day. I kept replaying moments from the trial in my mind. Had I said the right things on the stand? Had I seemed credible? Had the jury believed me? Through the windows, I could see the sun beginning to set. The golden light streaming in felt surreal, like everything was happening in slow motion. Other cases came and went, other families dealing with their own dramas. But for me, time had stopped. Everything existed in this suspended moment of waiting. Finally, after 3 hours and 17 minutes, I'd been watching the clock. The bailiff emerged and announced the jury had reached a verdict. My legs felt weak as we filed back into the courtroom. This was it. No more waiting, no more wondering. In moments, I would know whether justice was possible, whether the system worked, whether my fight had been worth it. The jury filed in, their faces serious and unreadable. I searched their expressions for any hint of what was coming, but found nothing. They took their seats. Judge Whitmore entered and took her position. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. My hands gripped the armrests of my chair. Robert's hand briefly touched my shoulder, a gesture of support, of solidarity. But I was alone in this moment, alone with my hope and my fear and my desperate need for this to end the right way. The jury foreman, a middle-aged man in a blue shirt who'd taken careful notes throughout the trial, stood when Judge Whitmore asked if they'd reached a verdict. "We have, Your Honor." "In the case of fraud, what is your verdict?" "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Bonnie Matthews." I felt my breath catch. "In the case of elder abuse, we find in favor of the plaintiff. In the case of forgery and misuse of power of attorney, we find in favor of the plaintiff." The courtroom seemed to spin. Robert's hand was on my shoulder. I'd won. On every single count. Judge Whitmore addressed Audrey and Derek. "This court finds that you did willfully and deliberately defraud Bonnie Matthews through forgery, misuse of legal documents, and elder abuse. The sale of the property at 847 Lakeshore Drive, Unit 14F, is hereby declared null and void. The property must be returned to Ms. Matthews immediately." Audrey was crying openly. Derek sat rigid, face pale. "Furthermore, you are ordered to return all remaining proceeds. The court calculates damages, including emotional distress, legal fees, and loss of use of property, at $135,000, to be paid within 60 days. She paused, looking directly at them. "I want to be very clear. What you did wasn't just illegal. It was morally reprehensible. You targeted a vulnerable family member, someone who trusted you, and you exploited that trust for financial gain. This court has seen many cases, but few as calculated and cruel as this. You should be ashamed." Audrey's sobs echoed. "This court is adjourned. Ms. Matthews, you'll receive documentation about property recovery within 48 hours. The gavel came down. I sat there, unable to move. It was over. After weeks of fighting, it was finally over. "Congratulations, Bonnie," Robert said. "You did it." Outside the courthouse, he shook my hand. "What will you do now?" I thought about that. "I'm going home. I'm going to take back control of my life and move forward. And Audrey? I looked back at the courthouse. Audrey made her choices. Now she lives with them. The couple who'd been living in my penthouse moved out within 48 hours. On a Thursday morning, exactly 7 weeks after I'd returned from Sedona and found strangers at my door, I stood outside that same door with my key in hand. The key that now worked. I turned it and pushed the door open. The penthouse was empty. The couple had taken their furniture. The walls were bare, but it was mine again. Truly mine. I walked through each room slowly. The living room with those floor-to-ceiling windows. The kitchen where I'd baked cookies for my grandchildren. The reading nook by the fireplace. The master bedroom. It was all the same, yet everything felt different. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the city. The view hadn't changed. The buildings, the lake, the way the afternoon sun hit the downtown skyscrapers. It was exactly as I remembered, but I had changed. 7 weeks ago, I'd been a trusting mother. Someone who believed the best in people, especially family. Now I was someone different. Maybe tougher, definitely more cautious, but also stronger. I'd fought for what was mine, and won. The hurt was still there, deep and painful. The betrayal didn't disappear just because I'd won in court. Every time I thought about Audrey planning this for months, forging my signature, the wound reopened. But alongside the pain was something else. Pride, satisfaction, the certainty that I'd done the right thing, even when it was hard. My phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Matthews, this is Sarah from Riverside Property Management. Your belongings have been retrieved from storage and will be delivered tomorrow morning. My belongings. At least Audrey hadn't sold those too. Yes, I'll be here. The moving truck arrived at 9:15 the next morning. By noon, my penthouse looked almost normal again. I spent the afternoon unpacking, putting dishes in cabinets, hanging pictures. Each item I put in its place was a declaration. I'm home. I'm staying. No one can take this from me again. That evening, as I sat in my reading nook with tea, my phone vibrated. Audrey. My finger hovered over delete. I didn't want to hear from her. Didn't want her apologies or excuses. But curiosity won. I opened it. Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me, and I understand, but I need you to know that I recognize what I did was unforgivable. Not just illegal, but morally wrong. I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I've lost everything because of this. Derek and I are divorcing. I'm moving in with a friend because I can't afford our house. The kids barely speak to me because they're ashamed. But the worst part is knowing I destroyed my relationship with you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, and I'm sorry. I read the message 3 times, looking for manipulation, for emotional blackmail, for any attempt to make me feel guilty for holding her accountable. But it wasn't there. The message was simple, direct, honest. She wasn't asking for anything, wasn't trying to worm her way back into my life. Just acknowledging what she'd done and accepting the consequences. I set the phone down and stared out the window. Part of me wanted to respond, to say something, anything, to bridge the enormous chasm that now existed between us. She was still my daughter, no matter what she'd done. That bond didn't just disappear, didn't evaporate because of betrayal. Somewhere in that woman who'd stolen from me was still the little girl who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read her stories. The teenager who'd come to me crying about her first heartbreak. The young woman who'd asked me to help her pick out her wedding dress. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, betrayed so completely, dismissed so casually, wasn't ready. The wound was still too raw. The memory of her voice on the phone, "Stop being so dramatic," still echoed too loudly in my mind. Maybe I would never be ready. Maybe some betrayals are too deep to fully heal from. I thought about what forgiveness would mean. Did it mean letting her off the hook? Pretending this hadn't happened? Going back to some semblance of our old relationship? No, I couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. The trust was broken, shattered into so many pieces I couldn't even imagine how one would begin to put it back together. But maybe, forgiveness didn't have to mean all of that. Maybe it could mean something else. Acknowledgement that she was trying. Recognition that she was taking responsibility. Acceptance that people can grow and change, even if the relationship between us could never be what it was. I didn't respond to the text. Not that night. Not the next day. Not the day after that. Maybe I would someday. Maybe I wouldn't. But right now, I needed time. Time to process everything that had happened. Time to heal. Time to figure out who I was now, after everything I'd been through. In the following days, I settled back into my home. I established new routines, coffee on the balcony in the morning, watching the city wake up, feeling grateful for this space that was mine again. Evening walks along the lake, breathing in the fresh air, reminding myself that I'd survived. Slowly reconnecting with the space that had been violated, making it feel safe again, making it feel like home again. Mrs. Chen came over with a casserole and a warm hug. "So glad you're back home, dear. The building hasn't been the same without you." We sat together in my living room, and she caught me up on all the building gossip I'd missed. Who was moving in, who was moving out, whose dog had gotten loose in the lobby. Normal things, mundane things. Things that reminded me that life goes on, that the world keeps turning, even when your own world has been turned upside down. My book club friends visited, bringing flowers and wine and laughter. We sat in my living room drinking tea and talking about the books we'd read, the shows we were watching, everything except what I'd been through. They knew I'd tell them when I was ready, and until then, they gave me the gift of normalcy, of friendship that didn't demand anything from me, of being there without needing to process or analyze or understand. It was exactly what I needed. These small moments of connection, these reminders that I still had a life, still had people who cared about me, still had a place in the world that wasn't defined by what Audrey had done to me. But, at night, when the city quieted and I was alone with my thoughts, the reality of what I'd lost hit hard. Not the penthouse. I'd gotten that back. The physical space was mine again. But Audrey, my grandchildren, the family dinners we used to have, the Sunday phone calls where we'd catch up on each other's weeks, the simple, taken-for-granted moments of being a mother and a grandmother, those were gone, maybe forever. I'd won the legal battle, had gotten justice, had proven that I wouldn't be taken advantage of. But justice didn't fill the empty chair at my dining table where Audrey used to sit. It didn't bring back the sound of my grandchildren's laughter echoing through these rooms. It didn't erase the memory of the person I'd loved most in the world looking at me and seeing nothing but a source of money to solve her problems. Some nights, I'd find myself standing in the doorway of the guest room where Audrey used to stay when she visited. The room was empty now, just a bed and a dresser and generic artwork on the walls. But in my mind, I could still see her there, younger, happier, before everything went wrong, before Derek and his gambling, before the debts and the desperation, before she made the choice to steal from me. I wondered sometimes when exactly it had changed. When had my daughter become capable of this? Was there a specific moment, a specific decision, or had it been gradual? A slow erosion of ethics, of boundaries, of the fundamental belief that some lines should never be crossed? Had I missed signs along the way? Had there been red flags I'd ignored because I didn't want to see them? These questions haunted me, but I knew deep down that they didn't have answers. Or if they did, the answers wouldn't change anything. What was done was done. The past couldn't be rewritten. I could only move forward from here. A week after moving back, Audrey sent another message. "I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I made such terrible choices. The therapist says I need to take full responsibility and stop blaming circumstances. You were right about everything. I was selfish. I was cruel. I prioritized money over the person who gave me everything. I don't expect you to care, but I thought you should know I'm trying to become a better person. Not for you. I know I can never make things right, but for my kids." That night, for the first time since Sedona, I slept deeply, really deeply. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through my window. I lay there listening to the familiar sounds of the building. I was home, truly, genuinely home. As I made coffee, I thought about what Robert had asked. What would I do now? "I'd take back my life," I'd said. But what did that look like? I couldn't just go back to how things were before. This experience had changed me too fundamentally. I was stronger than I'd known, more resilient, more willing to fight for what was right, even when it hurt. That had value. Audrey sent one more message that week. I heard the DA is moving forward with criminal charges. I'm not going to fight it. Whatever sentence I get, I deserve it. I stared at that message for a long time. Then, for the first time since this nightmare began, I typed a response. I hope you find peace, Audrey. I truly do. But that peace needs to come from within you, not from me. Take care of yourself, take care of your children, and learn from this. I hit send. Her response came 30 seconds later. Thank you, Mom. That's more than I deserve. And that was it. No more messages. Just an acceptance of consequences and a small, fragile thread that might lead somewhere someday. Or might not. And I was okay with either outcome. I finished my coffee and stepped onto the balcony. The morning air was crisp. The city was waking up. Life was moving forward. And I was moving forward with it. Changed, yes. Scarred, definitely. But still here. Still standing. Still me. 3 months after the trial, I was in line at the grocery store when I saw them. My grandchildren, Mason, 12 now, and Lily, just turned 9. They were with a woman I didn't recognize. Mason saw me first. His eyes widened. For a moment I thought he'd pretend not to notice. But then he tugged Lily's sleeve and whispered something. She looked over and her face lit up. "Grandma!" Lily started toward me, but Mason held her arm. She looked uncertain, like she didn't know if she was allowed. I made the decision for them. I stepped out of line and walked over. "Hi, sweetheart," I said to Lily. Then to Mason, "You've grown. You're almost as tall as your mom. I'm almost as tall as Dad," he said proudly. Then his face closed, as if remembering that mentioning his parents might be a mistake. The woman introduced herself. "I'm Rachel, friend of Audrey's. I'm sorry. I didn't realize—" "It's fine," I said. "It's good to see them." Mason was looking at the floor. He was old enough to understand what had happened. Old enough to feel the weight of fractured family. "How's school?" I asked gently. "Good," he mumbled. Then, looking up with serious eyes, he asked, "Are you mad at us?" My heart clenched. "Oh, honey, no. I'm not mad at you. Not at all. What happened between your mom and me? That's adult business. It has nothing to do with you. Mom cries a lot now," Lily offered. "She says she did something very bad to you." Rachel looked uncomfortable. "Kids, maybe we should—" "It's okay," I said. I crouched to Lily's level. "Your mom made some mistakes. Big mistakes. But that doesn't mean she's a bad person. It means she needs to learn and grow. And it doesn't mean I stopped caring about you two. Can we visit you sometimes?" Mason asked, hope in his voice. "Like we used to?" I hesitated. Maintaining a relationship with the grandchildren meant having some contact with Audrey, meant potentially exposing myself to more hurt. But looking at their faces, at Mason's cautious hope and Lily's open longing, I couldn't say no. "I'd like that," I said, "if your mom is okay with it." "Really?" Lily's face broke into a huge smile. We exchanged numbers with Rachel, who promised to talk to Audrey. As they walked away, Mason looked back and waved. I waved back, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of something that could eventually lead there. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, I saw Audrey standing alone in the hallway. She looked nervous, shifting from foot to foot. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. I unlocked the door but left the chain on, opening just enough to see her clearly. "Mom," she said, "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced, but I have something for you, and I wanted to deliver it personally." She held up a small box wrapped in brown paper. "You don't need to give me anything," I said. "I know, but please, take this. I'm not asking to come in. I'm not asking for anything else. Please just take it." Against my better judgment, I unlatched the chain. Audrey handed me the box. She looked thinner, tired, gray threads in her hair that hadn't been there before. "I won't stay," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to have this, and to tell you that Mason and Lily asked about visiting. If you're willing, I'd like that to happen. Not because I'm trying to manipulate my way back, but because they miss you and you were always a wonderful grandmother. They shouldn't lose that because of what I did." "I met them at the grocery store," I said. "They seem to be doing well." "They're resilient," Audrey said. "More resilient than I am." She tried to smile. "I've been going to therapy twice a week, working through things. understanding why I made the choices I did, not to excuse them, just to understand so I don't repeat them. That's good, I said, and I meant it. The criminal trial is next month, she said quietly. My lawyer thinks I'll get 18 months, probably serve 9 with good behavior. I'm scared, but I'm also weirdly relieved. Like I need to pay this debt before I can move on. I didn't know what to say. I should go, Audrey said. Thank you for talking to me, for considering letting the kids visit. She turned to leave, then paused. Mom, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because I'm facing consequences. But because I hurt you. Because I betrayed your trust. Because I treated you like you were disposable. You deserved so much better from me. Her voice cracked. She didn't wait for a response, just walked toward the elevator. I closed the door and sat down to open the box. Inside was a photo album. Old. Leather-bound. Worn. I recognized it. It was the album my mother had kept, full of pictures from my childhood. I'd given it to Audrey years ago. Tucked into the front page was a handwritten note. Mom, I found this when I was packing. I wanted you to have it back. Not because I don't want it, but because it belongs with you. These are your roots, your history, the foundation of everything you built. I took so much from you. I can't give it all back, but I can give you this. Love, Audrey. I sat there with the album in my lap, looking at a picture of me at 5 years old, standing between my parents in front of our small apartment. We didn't have much then, but we had each other. We had love. We had trust. That little girl grew up believing that hard work, honesty, and respect for family meant something. Audrey's actions had shaken that belief, but sitting there with that album, with tangible proof of where I came from and what I'd overcome, I realized something. Audrey's betrayal hadn't destroyed me. It had hurt, changed me, but I was still here, still standing, still fundamentally the same person who'd built a life from nothing. And maybe there was room in my life for both boundaries and connection, for holding people accountable and showing mercy, for protecting myself and leaving the door open, just a crack, for the possibility of healing. I wasn't ready to forgive Audrey completely. Maybe I never would be, but I could accept her apology. I could allow my grandchildren into my life. I could acknowledge she was trying to become better, even if it didn't erase what she'd done. That evening, I called Rachel and arranged for Mason and Lily to visit the following Saturday. Then, I sent Audrey a brief message. Thank you for the album. It means a lot. The kids can come Saturday at 10. Her response came quickly. Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. I turned off my phone and looked around my penthouse. My home that I'd fought for and won back. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol. A reminder that I was stronger than I'd thought. That I could face betrayal and come out intact. The justice I'd fought for had cost me my relationship with my daughter, at least for now. It had cost me my illusions about family loyalty being unconditional. It had cost me my innocence, my belief that love was always enough. But it had also given me something: dignity, self-respect, the certainty that I could stand up for myself when it mattered, the proof that actions have consequences. And maybe, if we were both willing to work at it, it had given Audrey and me a chance at something new. Not what we had before. That was gone forever. But maybe something more honest, more real, built on truth instead of assumptions. I didn't know if that would happen. Couldn't guarantee it. But for the first time since I'd come back from Sedona months ago, I felt like it was possible. And possibility, I was learning, was sometimes enough. Saturday morning came with sunshine streaming through my balcony windows. I'd been up since 6 a.m., unable to sleep from a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. I cleaned the penthouse thoroughly, not because it was dirty, but because I needed something to do with my hands, some way to channel the nervous energy coursing through me. I baked cookies, Mason's favorites, chocolate chip, using the recipe I'd perfected over years of being a grandmother. As the warm, sweet smell filled my kitchen, I was transported back to simpler times. Times when Audrey would bring the kids over on Saturday mornings and we'd spend the day baking together. Mason would always try to sneak cookie dough when he thought I wasn't looking. Lily would carefully place each chocolate chip on the unbaked cookies, arranging them in perfect patterns. Those memories felt both close and impossibly distant, like they'd happened to a different version of me, in a different lifetime, but they'd happened. They were real. And maybe, we could create new memories. Different ones. Ones built on a more honest foundation. I set out the board games we used to play. Uno, Sorry, Monopoly. I put fresh flowers in a vase on the coffee table. I made sure there was juice and milk in the refrigerator. All the small preparations of someone who desperately wanted things to go well, who needed this reconnection to work. At exactly 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my shirt, and walked to the door. When I opened it, there they were. Mason and Lily, standing with Rachel. Mason looked nervous, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes not quite meeting mine. But Lily looked like she might burst from contained excitement. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. Lily rushed past me into the living room, her eyes lighting up as she took everything in. "Everything looks the same. It's exactly like I remembered." "Well, almost the same," I said, laughing. The sound of my own laughter surprised me. It felt good, natural, like maybe I could do this. "That's a new lamp over there." And I repainted the guest room. "Can I see your room, Grandma? Is my drawing still on your fridge?" Lily was already heading toward the kitchen. Mason entered more slowly, more carefully. He wasn't rushing or bouncing like his sister. He walked to the balcony door and looked out at the view. The same view he'd looked at dozens of times before, during all those visits when things were normal, when our family was intact. "I missed this place," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that seemed too heavy for a 12-year-old. "I missed you." My throat tightened. "I missed you too, sweetheart. So much." Rachel hesitated at the door, looking uncertain. "I can come back in a few hours, say 1 p.m.? "Perfect," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. After she left, the three of us stood there awkwardly for a moment. The gap of months stretched between us. The unspoken knowledge of what had happened, why we hadn't seen each other, why there'd been this terrible absence in all our lives. Then Lily broke the tension, as kids often do, with their beautiful ability to live in the present moment. "Can we have cookies? I smell cookies. Did you make chocolate chip?" And just like that, we were okay. Not perfect. Not back to how things were, but okay. We spent the morning doing all the things we used to do, playing games around the coffee table, talking about their lives, Mason's soccer team, and how they'd almost made it to regionals, Lily's art class and the mural project her school was working on. Normal things. Kid things. Things that had nothing to do with courtrooms or betrayal or broken families. Mason told me elaborate stories about his teammates, doing impressions of his coach that made us all laugh. Lily showed me pictures on her phone of her artwork, scrolling through dozens of images while providing detailed commentary on each one. She'd gotten so good, her drawings showing real skill and creativity. It felt almost like before. Almost. Except there was a carefulness now that hadn't been there in the past. A awareness of boundaries, of topics we didn't discuss, of the reality that things had changed and couldn't be unchanged. Audrey's name came up only once, when Lily was showing me a picture of a family portrait she'd drawn for art class. "Mom helped me with the shading on Dad's face," she said, then stopped abruptly, as if suddenly remembering that mentioning her mother might be forbidden, might ruin everything. "That's nice that she helped you," I said gently. "The shading looks really good." She always was artistic. Lily looked relieved, like she'd been given permission to acknowledge that her mother existed, that she could love both of us, even though we couldn't love each other anymore. When Rachel came to pick them up, Lily hugged me tight. "Can we come back next weekend?" "We'll see," I said, "but I'd like that." After they left, I stood in my penthouse surrounded by the small chaos they'd created. Cookie crumbs, game pieces scattered. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the naive peace of ignorance, but the hard-won peace of someone who'd been through trials and come out stronger. The kind of peace that knows darkness exists, but chooses light anyway. That night, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, my phone buzzed. "Audrey, thank you for spending time with Mason and Lily. They came home so happy. Thank you for not punishing them for what I did." I stared at the message. Then I typed, "They're good kids. They deserve to have their grandmother in their lives. That doesn't change because of what happened between us." 3 dots appeared. Then, I don't deserve your kindness. I thought about how to respond, about all the hurt I could express, but instead, I wrote, maybe not, but I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me and for them. No response came, and that was okay. I set my phone down and looked out at the city, Chicago at sunset, all golden light and long shadows. My city, my view, my home. 4 months ago, I'd stood in a hotel room wondering if I'd ever get any of this back, wondering if justice was even possible. Now, sitting here in the home I'd fought for and won back, I knew the answers. Justice was possible, but it came with a cost. Trust could be broken, but boundaries could be built. And family, real family, wasn't just about blood. It was about respect, about honesty, about treating the people who love you like they matter. Audrey had failed that test, had chosen money over her mother, and she was paying the price. But she was also trying, maybe too late, maybe not enough, but trying nonetheless. And maybe that was worth something. I didn't have to forgive her to acknowledge that. Didn't have to forget what she'd done to see she was attempting to become better. I could hold both truths. What she did was unforgivable, and she's working to be better. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky orange and pink. Tomorrow I'd wake up in my own bed, in my own home, surrounded by the life I'd built. I'd have coffee on my balcony, maybe call Mrs. Chen, perhaps join that volunteer program I'd been researching, helping other elderly people who'd been victims of financial exploitation, using my experience to protect others. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. Not the future I'd imagined a year ago, but a future nonetheless. And I was ready for it, stronger than before, wiser, more careful, yes, but also more certain of who I was and what I deserved. This was the tragedy of choices made and consequences faced, of trust broken and the long, difficult road to anything resembling redemption. And maybe, with enough time and work, it was also the story of how both Audrey and I became better versions of ourselves. The last light faded from the sky. The city lights began to twinkle. And I sat there in my reading nook, in my home, with my tea, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Content. Not happy, exactly. The hurt was still too fresh. But content. At peace with my choices. Confident I'd done the right thing. And hopeful that maybe eventually there could be some kind of relationship with Audrey again. Not what we had before. That was gone forever. But something new. Something honest. Something built on reality instead of illusion. I didn't know if we'd get there. Time would tell. But for now, sitting in my home that I'd fought so hard to keep, surrounded by the life I'd reclaimed, I felt something important. I felt like myself again, and that was enough.